more advanced tactic, but also it's a way that you can reach more authors that you wouldn't have been able to reach had you just launched a book on Amazon in the first place. So, yeah, welcome to the show, Oriana. It's really great to chat to you.
Teddy, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. The live stream's all set up correctly now. So I think
Great.
we're good to go. Yeah. So why don't you just give us a quick introduction about Kickstarter and your job and like why we're
Yeah,
talking today?
totally. I'm actually going to get into that in the presentation. So why don't I go ahead and start? I believe, yeah, I cannot see you now. So you can see my screen.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
great.
I'm just going to
It's full screen.
proceed as if everything is perfect. Please, like, loudly butt in if it's not, because I won't see you like waving your hands at me or anything. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is a Kickstarter 101 presentation for authors. Here's a little bit about me, what kind of brought me to this work. I have been all around the publishing industry. I started back at Random House before they'd even absorbed Penguin. I've been a copy editor for MTV News, a news writer for Atlas Obscura, a matchmaker for ghostwriters at Gotham Ghostwriters, all sorts of strange things. And I've written for a number of different arts and culture outlets. I published my own book 10 years ago, which grew out of a year-long reporting project on underground DIY venues all across New York City. So here are the things that I'm going to talk about in this presentation. I'm going to do my best not to read slides directly, but just wanted to give you an idea of what to expect. First, I'll just talk a little bit about what Kickstarter is, what sets us apart in the crowdfunding landscape, and let you watch this really fun GIF compilation of some of our most exciting, biggest creators. I think we've been through it twice when I see Bill Nye again. Yeah. Okay. So, what makes Kickstarter unique? Our mission is to bring creative projects to life. That is, everything we care about, everything we do comes back to supporting that mission. We, in fact, believe so strongly in that Kickstarter is incorporated as a public benefit corporation. I did not know what this was before I started working here, but it's a legal and business charter that requires us to, it essentially turns us into a mission driven for profit company. We have to keep in mind our mission with every choice we make, with everything that we do. Kickstarter also is a very progressive company. We have a lot of really, I think, ethical policies. We donate 5% of our after tax profits to organizations fighting income inequality and performing arts education. We have some promises about how our CEO pay cannot be X% higher than our lowest employee. You can see all of this in our annual PBC reports. They're really interesting reading. On a technical side, Kickstarter's funding model is all or nothing. That means if you set out to raise $5,000 and you only raise $3,000, you don't get any of the money. People tend to think that that's scary at first glance, but it was actually designed that way to protect artists and creatives. You're going to be making a lot of promises during the course of your campaign about what you'll make, how big it will be, how many pages, etc. And if you come to the end of that project and you don't have enough money to do all the things that you've promised, you've put yourself in a really bad spot. So we want to make sure that nobody is trying to bring their creative work to life with an incomplete budget. Beyond that, the all or nothing model can have a really strong impact of sort of propelling projects to and often far beyond their stated goal. Another thing that's really important about Kickstarter is that we're in the business of giving you your audience, where this has been foundational to Kickstarter since we launched. Over the last 5 or so years, I think we've all realized that, you know, you can work really hard on these platforms to build up your audience, and then with an algorithm tweak or like a shift in terms of service, suddenly you've lost access to all of that, all of those supporters that you've been cultivating. Kickstarter is just the opposite. We are really about collapsing the boundaries between a creator and their supporters. So you will see during the course of the campaign a ton of demographic info about where your backers are, what time of day they're backing, what kind of device they're using, what specific platform brought them to ours. You'll also get to interact with them during the campaign. You can ask them questions, read their comments, you know, sort of like help them become part of the process of creativity that you're doing. And at the end of a project that is successfully completed, you get everybody's email addresses. You get to see if they want to be added to your mailing list. You get all sorts of their mailing address and all kinds of other information. So these are folks who will continue to be in your audience for as long as they want to be. Finally, Kickstarter takes 5% off only successful campaigns. That's an industry setting standard. We've never raised our rates. Our payments are processed by Stripe and they take a 3 to 4% variable. So if you budget 10% for fees, you'll be more than covered and you'll be paying much less than most other ways that you can sell books on the internet. Teddy, should I keep going? Any thoughts or questions there?
Yeah. So with the fee that you take, so is that only if, because you mentioned before there's like an all or nothing. So say you don't reach your funding goal and you decide, okay, I
No fee. Yep.
can't afford to. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You don't owe anybody any money, including us, if the project does not reach its funding goal. That's only for successful projects.
Nice. Okay. And how much money do people usually try to raise for their first book?
Well, I'll get a little bit into that. Let me come
Great.
back to that because I'm
Comes
going to
out,
talk
yeah.
about that in a couple of slides. Totally fine. Just some overviews by the numbers. This is in Kickstarter's entire history, 281,000 projects funded. We are closing in on $9 billion pledged from 24 million unique backers. And that's Kickstarter overall. Here are some stats about Kickstarter publishing. So 71,000 projects launched, more than 3 million backers, $400 million pledged to campaigns. This is my favorite stat to share. There are always going to be people who sort of don't understand and don't try that hard to set up Kickstarter campaigns. They raise $2 or $3 and then, throw in the towel, and they throw off all of our averages. So I think a really telling metric is to look at projects that have gotten at least 25 backers. To me, that's a good measure of getting a little bit bigger than your mom, your best friend, the folks who are essentially obligated to support anything that you do. So on a publishing campaign, if you can get at least 25 backers, your chance of success is 84%. Really, really, really high. So this will get a bit to that your question, Teddy. This is for our last complete calendar year. Here are some averages just for publishing projects. The average raise per campaign, 16K. Average backers per project, just under 200. Average pledge per backer is $63, which is almost twice as high as our site average. I think this is very clearly driven by limited and special editions, the sort of TikTokization of publishing overall. But I also think it points to the fact that Kickstarter backers are far less price sensitive than your average sort of online book buyer. And last year we had 2,700 first time creators running campaigns. So that's really exciting to see. So that's not exactly an answer to your question, Teddy, but gives you some context for like
Yeah.
what people are doing here. And of course, these are averages. I'm about to go into some of our highest raising campaigns. So there are plenty that are raising six figures and far beyond, and also plenty that are raising $500 or $1,000 just to do like a small thing and sort of build their audience slowly.
That's amazing. So $63 per backer.
Yeah.
That sounds high to me. That is, so is that a lot more than what you'd get on the normal side? We'll call it the normal side of Kickstarter, but the non-book side of Kickstarter.
Well, yeah, the average pledge amount across on the whole category is $25. I mean,
Wow.
it really depends pretty dramatically. Like design and technology, those are often like gadgets. And so, we're currently our highest funded campaign ever is still live. It's a 3D printer by Eufymake. Their average per backer has got to be much higher. I don't actually remember what that printer costs, but it's a lot more than $63. So it really depends on the kind of project.
Nice. Is the book category one of the bigger categories on Kickstarter, or is
So
it?
it's right in the middle.
Right.
Our biggest categories are design, technology, and games. The cultural categories tend to be smaller, like music and arts and film. Publishing and comics are right in the middle and always have been. We've seen a real shift since Kickstarter's inception. It used to be arts and music. We're at the top. Now they've sort of like changed. There was like not a lot of gadgets. Now that's become a huge part of our annual earnings. But publishing and comics have stayed really steady, also steady year over year growth every single year in terms of number of campaigns launched, number of dollars raised, success rate. So I feel pretty good being in like the very solid middle of the platform.
Nice. Okay, great. Yeah, this is really interesting. Thank you. Keep going.
Yeah, for sure.
Just want to say, for people
Yeah.
that don't know anything about Kickstarter at all, what you generally do is people pledge for something that doesn't exist yet. That's the whole point of it, isn't it? The book hasn't either been written or it hasn't been created in its like special edition form or something like that.
Yeah,
So it's
that's exactly
basically you
right.
getting funding to write the book. It's kind of like getting your own advance, but sourcing
Yeah.
out yourself.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it for
Yeah.
self-published authors for sure. And so that leads well into my next slide. What is this? Why would you do this? What are the benefits of running a Kickstarter campaign for authors? Can really help you develop an additional revenue source. So, there are many ways to sell books online and in person, and Kickstarter can be just one part of a sort of multifaceted financial strategy. As I discussed earlier, Kickstarter helps you connect directly with your readers in ways that like most other places online are not making it so easy for you to do. Because the funding is all or nothing and you don't have to make the project if you don't raise your goal. This is an excellent place to test out an ambitious idea. You can say, I can only do this deluxe edition or this new genre or this big box set if I raise $10,000. And that will help you figure out whether your audience is there for that. You can also do a more traditional kind of a pre-sale type campaign, which will help you set appropriate print runs. So 100 people want this book, 1,000 people want this book. That can help you assess how many copies to do at once. Also, given the reward structure, you can sell through your backlist by having individual titles and bundles of previous works you've written in addition to your main tier, which will help you get to your goal faster. Kickstarter is a cool way to demystify publishing because after the campaign, you will be sending backer updates kind of forever, or at least until you have fulfilled your project. So you get to show people what it's really like to go from a typed out manuscript to an actual finished bound book. It's also a very cool place to do something new with your existing IP. I'll get into this in some of the case studies, but we're seeing a lot of sort of crossovers of people making tarot decks with their characters or board games set in their world or, scarves or candles or various sorts of crafts that have elements of, the world that they've been writing in. And Kickstarter can be a really fun place to try that sort of stuff.
Nice. Yeah. When I spoke to Kevin Anderson on this podcast, he was creating like cards and board games for some of his books, which was really
Totally.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great one. I'm glad you had him on. He's really smart, really experimental, definitely gets Kickstarter and how helpful it can be for an indie author.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, this is going to be some case studies. As I said, these are like some of our highest earning projects from like, I think they're all from last year. So meant to be aspirational, but also to illustrate some of the points that I just made. So Will White, he's making plenty of money selling his books through his website, through all of his other avenues. But Kickstarter allowed him to sort of like concentrate things. I believe he's run 4 campaigns, 3 for sets of 3 books, books 1 through 3, books 4 through 6, books 7 through 9, and 1 for an animation adaptation. I believe he's got 1 more campaign in the Cradle series, which I think will run later this year. He is obviously doing very well with these projects, and I have no reason to think he would not do even better with the final one. As I said, connecting directly with your readers. So the Electronic Gaming Monthly was like the premier video game magazine in the 90s. They had decided they wanted to run a campaign to make this compendium a sort of, big, definitive, comprehensive history of their, the best of their magazine. The campaign went so incredibly well, and they heard from so many backers who said this compendium sounds awesome, but what I would really like to see is an electronic archive of every single piece that was ever written. They raised so much money that they decided to add that as an element to the campaign. So I think that's an excellent example of like, if you're not sure what your audience wants, ask them and maybe they'll tell you, and it will be something that you didn't even realize that you could totally do. This Adoroscopes, this is from a husband and husband team. Paul Castle is an Instagram famous blind illustrator. His husband helps to run his business. And so this was not his first, but he does not have that many works in print, like actual art compendia. And so he wanted to see if his audience would support not just digital art, but having it in, actual printed bound form. As you can see, they certainly did support it. This is a very successful campaign. He's got another one on deck as well. I'm not sure when that's coming out, and I'm not going to spoiler it, but you could follow him on Kickstarter if you wanted to and find out when that's coming next.
Nice. So it's not just for, well, as we see, got another one here. It's not just for fiction books. It's actually for people
Oh
who are
yeah,
creating. Yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. It can be for any kind of, it can be for any kind of book or book adjacent creative
yeah.
project. These examples are all books, but we've seen literary museum exhibitions, we do podcasts, magazines, literary inspired chocolate bars. That is a real one. There's a company, oh, what are they called? Open Book Chocolates. Yeah, so really kind of anything that's got literary allusions
Yeah.
as part of it. This was just another, Nick Selleck was wanting to bring out his new book in a way where he could really get a sense of like, are we doing a small print run, a medium sized print run, etc., and also to sell through a lot of his previous works. He's a comics artist. He works on the Awkward Yeti, if I recall correctly. So yeah, he was able to raise quite a tidy sum, understand how many people were interested in this new nonfiction book, and also use existing copies of his comic works to help him get, a much higher amount of money all at once. Bonkers Romance, incredible duo, Jenny Nordbeck and Katie Roberts. This was a 6 novella compendium in 3 volumes. And so this is just one example of them showing off their prototype, but they do a tremendous job through their backer updates of really explaining all of the nitty gritty that goes into print production in an engaging and fun way.
Those books look amazing.
Oh my God, they're so good. Their books are so
One
beautiful.
one thing I noticed with a lot of these books is we're printing, like, a lot of them seem to be printing like really high quality books like this one.
Yeah,
Say
for
if
sure.
you're not quite at that level where you can create these, like, hardback copies, or maybe you don't even want to do that. Can Is Kickstarter still a good place to launch maybe just the pre-sales for a book that you're planning on
Totally.
launching on
Yeah.
Amazon or something?
Yeah, no, of course. I would say one thing to keep in mind with that, I think Amazon has rules about what you can't do them at the same time. You can't have run a Kickstarter for a book that is currently on Amazon.
Right.
You have to take it off Amazon, but actually that is good for your Kickstarter as well because you really want to be able to funnel everybody into one place, kind of like galvanize all of that attention into the sort of like month long all or nothing now or never Kickstarter campaign. And then it's perfectly fine to use Kickstarter to fund your print run with the understanding that you will be selling the extras, the overflow on Amazon. I would just be very careful to keep in mind your backer experience because if you're saying to people, come in on the ground floor, be an early adopter, support my work before it exists, you don't want the minute the campaign closes for them to see the book for sale on Amazon and then feel like they sort of had a bad time. So you want to make sure that you're rewarding them for that support by giving them the book early or for less money or with a lot of extras, whatever makes sense for you, but just make sure that they feel really good about that support that they're giving you. I
Great.
think this is my last case study. Oh yeah, I had talked about crossover IP. So Sky Warren, she writes a lot of sort of like self improvement project books for writers. And so she was able to turn a book that she had already written into a workbook and a course and a sort of like um, consulting sessions. So that's really like work that she had already done, just in a slightly different format. And like I said, there are many other kinds of ways, depending on what sort of content you write, that you can repurpose things into other formats and just help make more money off the things that you've already done.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A lot of people I speak to through this podcast and coaching and things like that have already written a book, a bit like Sky's done here,
Yeah,
but they then want to create a workbook as something that goes along with it. So that could be a great idea for either something you give away as part of the campaign or something
totally.
to
And
raise money for.
I believe that sites like Amazon are deprioritizing and sometimes delisting workbooks as like low content. So
Yep.
Kickstarter can be a really excellent place to make up that difference.
Oh, okay. Right. Interesting.
So, okay, now I'm going to just go over some like top level basics of a campaign. Here's a sort of overall view. You're going to first define your idea and identify your audience. We're making a novel, a box set, a workbook, a tarot deck, whatever that is. Figure out who are the people who might want that. Work out what you're making and how much it will cost. Please do not skip this step. This means both the sort of print production, how much it's going to cost to make the book exactly as you've designed it, and also any rewards you're going to be manufacturing, and also your bubble mailers, your duct tape, your stamps, all of those costs. You want to understand really clearly how much this is going to cost you, because if you don't do that, this is an easy way to get yourself into a lot of trouble. That will help inform, obviously, how much money you're going to be asking for, and help you make sure that you're not going to put yourself in a really bad spot if you don't raise enough. Start sharing, connecting with your audience, and sharing your plans long before you launch. As you can see, we recommend at least 2 weeks in pre launch. You can have a pre launch page up, which is designed to collect followers on the project. And we see a very high conversion from pre launch followers to project backers. So, any work that you can do for yourself, getting that follower count up is going to pay off well once the campaign is live.
So just talking about the follower count,
Mhm.
I know a lot of people maybe are new to publishing and they don't have that good email list yet, so to really help promote it. If you launch a book on Kickstarter without that strong email list, does Kickstarter help you to get it in front of people who could be interested in it, or is it something you
Yeah,
need to kind of promote yourself?
I'm gonna talk much more detail about audience later. I would say
Okay,
yes, but Kickstarter is designed to have an amplifying effect. So if you have no audience and no means to reach them, it is probably a little bit early for you to try to do
okay,
a campaign. But if you bring your people first, Kickstarter can really help elevate your project and share it with a much wider universe of people.
nice.
So concurrent to your pre-launch work, you're going to be designing your campaign page, which I'm going to go into in a lot more detail in the next batch of slides. We generally recommend that you run your campaign for about 30 days. We now have late pledges, which is a way to just capture the effects of the sort of like last burst of promotion. You can run those for as long as you want. I recommend in publishing between like 2 to 7 days. That's like that seems to be a good amount without sacrificing your production timelines or your print runs. But do as you like, and then you'll do pledge management and fulfillment for as long as that takes after the campaign. So that's the basic shape of concept to fulfillment of a campaign. I'm going to go into. Do you have any? Now I'm
No,
going to
this
go
is
into.
great.
Okay. So these are all of the elements, and I've got a slide for each of creating and running the project itself. So first, you're going to make a video. I will say, if a video is like so scary to you that that is like the thing that's keeping you off Kickstarter, I would say it's not a requirement to have one. We do tend to see a preference for videos, but if you're going to do one, really keep it short and tight. I would say 1 to 2 minutes, absolute max. Make sure you display your work as best you can and show yourself if you are comfortable doing so. There's a real cult of personality element to Kickstarter where people really want to know the person they're supporting with
Hmm.
their money.
I think I remember chatting to you once about this, the video idea, because people get worried about it. But you said even if you just do one on your phone, just so it shows you and the book and that kind of
Totally.
stuff, it works really well because actually it's a
Yeah,
bit more personable.
totally. A little direct to camera address is delightful. There's nothing wrong with that. Your story section, this is the sort of like, this is everything that you're telling your supporters about what you're doing. Some things to make sure you do: an exciting and bright main image. You can see on this one in the example, you've got like the font, you've got these gorgeous books, you've got a nice background, it's well balanced. This is really going to like draw in the eye. Recommended to use all the characters or most of the characters in your title and subtitle. It's really valuable real estate. Don't waste it. Make sure your page is visually dynamic. Kickstarter is on the internet. The internet's a visual medium. Do not have people open your project and be confronted by a giant wall of text. Make sure you tell your story thoroughly. And that can not just mean the plot of your book, but also who you are, what brought you to this work, what inspires you to keep writing, more detail about your rewards, your collaborators, your timeline, your budget, anything that you feel like sharing that's going to make people excited about what you're doing. Yeah. And I'm sure I will say this more times, but this whole presentation is meant to be an overview. The best way to really learn how to do this is to spend time on Kickstarter, back
Mhm.
campaigns, study other people's projects, look at what works, look at what doesn't work. I'm an expert in Kickstarter because I stare at Kickstarter all day long. You too can stare at Kickstarter, find all the best tricks, take them for your own. Yeah, that's going to be your best way to figure out how to
Yeah.
do this well.
Maybe find one that's like in a similar category to you, or like one that even if it's just one that you want to read yourself, then that way you can
Totally.
learn about it, and
Yeah.
that'd be the best way to do it. I think. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, 1,000%. Next is the rewards. To my mind, the rewards are really foundational to the sort of Kickstarter ethos. You can use these to appeal to a large array of backers, folks who just want an ebook or a paperback, folks who want varying levels of like high end deluxe books. You could also do stuff like a virtual launch party or a book club or a soundtrack in, you know, a link to 20 tracks that people could listen to while they're reading, things like that. As I said earlier, the most common backing amount across the site is $25. In a beginner campaign, we recommend 5 to 7 reward tiers. The more things you add, the more kinds of backers you can appeal to, but also the more difficult your life will be at the fulfillment stage. So when you're just starting out, keeping it simple is a good idea. And yeah, think beyond swag. I think later in this presentation, I have a rewards brainstorm that's like a whole bunch of different things. But here too, look at other campaigns and see what other folks are doing and figure out what your version of that is going to be. Oh, yeah, here we go. I'm not going to read this because that's boring, but here are just some things that you could think about for your project. Or, as I said, if storytelling consultation doesn't make sense for you, maybe an editorial review does, or a social media consult, you know, whatever like that. Yeah, think about things that you can offer with your time, not necessarily with your money. So, stretch goals, just a word about that. I will start by saying there is not a requirement to use them. Some people think that once you hit your goal, it's necessary for you to roll out a cascading, complicated list of stretch goals. People will continue to back your project. In fact, they're going to be even more likely to back it once you've hit your goal because that's that much likelier that this thing is going to actually really happen. So if all you want to do is fund a print run of these books, you don't have to add anything else. If you want to, make sure that you have really, really done a real budgeting of how much each stretch goal is going to cost. Don't let yourself just get caught up in the heat of the moment and start offering crazy things that you don't know how to make. I would wait until you've reached your main goal to reveal your stretch goals. I often see projects launching with like, you know, stretch 20 stretch goals listed up to $5 million. If you do that, you are a sort of confusing the messaging around how much money you really need to raise, and also b, you're depriving yourself of these reveals, of a chance to do like a whole fresh round of promotion. Guess what? We've hit our goal. Isn't this exciting? If we raise another $2,000, here's the next cool thing that we're going to do. So give yourself the ability to do that, or to change your mind. You know, if you decide you want to adjust your total raise for stretch goals or your total number of backers or anything like that. So I would know that stuff beforehand, but keep it off the page. You can also talk directly to your audience. If we raise another $5,000, would you rather us make you know, an extra signature in the books of full color illustrations, or some branded swag like tote bags and, you know, pens, whatever? Ask people what they want, give them buy-in, make them feel really connected to your creative project, and then they're going to be that much likelier to add money or grab add-ons, whatever it is that you decide to add. Finally, backer updates. So this is what's happening during the course of your campaign. This is the way that you're directly messaging all the people who've already supported your work. You can do these as often as you want to. I would, you know, be somewhat aware that you're, you know, this is a direct line of communication to your people. So probably you don't want to send one every single day. But certainly celebrate milestones. I would send one the first or second day just to thank all your earliest supporters. Send one when you get funded or when you've reached 50%, things like that. Whatever cadence makes sense for you. Keep in mind who you are, who your audience is for these. I see a lot of backer updates that are like, don't forget to support the project, but these are people who have already supported. So think about what else you can ask or say to them, rather than this messaging of like, did you back? Did you back? Did you back? Because they already have. And make sure to keep your supporters in the loop. So make sure they understand where things are with the campaign, what's coming next. Another thing I should have put on this list is recommend other projects. This is a really excellent way of demonstrating that Kickstarter is a community, and, you know, you can use your largesse to say, well, you have funded my work. I also think you would love this other project or these other creators. I think they're doing something similar or unique or interesting, that really makes the sort of rising tide lifting all boats mechanism come into play. And other people will presumably do that for you. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a bit about different types of audiences and how to find them. Did you, Teddy, should I pause? Did you have any questions from the above?
No, no, I think this makes sense. Yeah, it'd be good to know about the different audiences because I know we have people at different levels here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So a really smart man named Russell Nolte, who might be known to some of you,
yes.
divided the audiences for me this way: owned, earned, borrowed, and bought. And I told him on the spot that I would be stealing that and putting it into my presentation, which I've done. So I got slides for each of these, but basically, there's the audiences that are already yours, the audiences that you might earn during the course of the campaign, audiences that you could borrow from other people, and audiences that you can pay for. So let's go through each of these. This was when you were asking me earlier about your mailing list. At this point, given how every social platform is sort of devolving in its own terrible and strange way, your newsletter is the strongest tool you have. If you're thinking about doing a Kickstarter ever or doing anything as an author, the best thing you can be doing for yourself now is building up that email newsletter, your those addresses, and communicating with your audience. You don't want the first time you ever send them a newsletter to be when you're asking them for money. So think about that now and start working to, and your existing audience also certainly includes all of your various social platforms, any, for example, YouTube channels that you run or podcasts that you do, but anything where you already control access to. So that's going to be, your inner circle, your main, the bulk of your early backers are going to come from there. The broader Kickstarter community, as we've discussed, once you, a publishing campaign on average is going to earn 20 to 40% of their backers from Kickstarter writ large. These are new backers coming through the ecosystem who are not known to you. So 20 to 40%, that's not nothing, but it is definitely not everything. So this really is, in order to find success here, you would do well to bring your audience first, which
Hmm.
allows our algorithm to see what you're doing, to understand that people are really interested in this, and to help surface it to more and more people. Signal boosters and amplifiers, this is your borrowed audiences. So if you have a friend who runs a YouTube program or has great traction on Instagram Reels or TikTok or a good Reddit channel, anything like that, if any of those people are going to be willing to share your work with their audiences, this is going to help boost your signal and amplify your work. Also, think about ways that you can make that symbiotic. Is there anything that they are doing that you could also promote through or outside of the campaign itself? Find ways to make this a sort of like nice symbiotic community relationship, non-extractive. And then just a quick word on performance and digital marketing. A lot of people are moving toward paid ads these days. I will say anecdotally, I do not hear that it is working that well for books and other creative work. Um, if this is something that you're interested in, I definitely recommend experimenting with it. If it's something you can afford, you can work with a professional who knows how to do this sort of thing. But I would not spend a ton of money just sort of like blindly, sponsoring ads and like doing different things if you don't have a pretty clear strategy, because I don't think it's necessarily all that effective specifically for books.
Do you know anyone that's had success doing ads for their books?
I mean, yes,
Sorry,
sure.
for their Kickstarter.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, there are definitely people who do it. But like I said, uh, those tend to be folks who have a strong strategy, who work in this space, who work with professionals, who work in this space. Like, yeah, like I said, I would not just like spend a bunch of money if you kind of don't know what you're doing.
No, I guess it would be good if you could get the ads to be cost neutral.
Well, sure. Yes, that would certainly be useful. Yeah, you want your return on ad spend to be, you want your ads to be making money, not losing money.
Hey Anna, I think you've joined. I don't know how you've joined this link, but I think you need to go via YouTube. Sorry, I'm just going to kick you out. Sorry, Orina.
That's okay. I'm almost done. I was just going to share some platform trends and some of our new features, and then we can get to the Q&A. These are some of the growth areas on the publishing side. We're seeing a lot of work in thought leadership. We talked about this with Sky Warren, folks like that. Anyone who's got a natural audience already built up for the thought leadership work that they do probably has a book in them and probably would do well to publish it on Kickstarter. We talked about how to and workbooks, special and deluxe editions are leading the publishing industry everywhere. Genre fiction is doing really well here, again, as with everywhere, particularly romance, romantasy, lit RPG, and sci-fi and fantasy have always had a really strong showing on Kickstarter. So that's not to say that other kinds of books are not going to do well here, but these are the places where we're seeing the biggest recent growth. We've added a bunch of new features lately. I'm just going to go over this kind of quickly because this is really sort of like 201 level stuff. And if you're here as a beginner or have never used the platform before, this is going to get a little bit into the weeds. But just a couple of months ago, Kickstarter released our own pledge management system. This is a sort of comprehensive system that will help you do everything that happens after your campaign is closed. We've switched to a SKU based reward system rather than tier based. We can help you do post campaign upgrades, add ons. You can charge shipping later, all sorts of order management stuff, tax collection, and even a tariff tool to offset to help you ask your audience to offset and be very clear about what's going on with tariffs. As I said, just top level. There's a ton of information about this all over our site if you are at the point where you want to learn about it. We've also just released Pledge Over Time, which is Kickstarter's version of a payment plan. This kicks in. This is a toggle. You either use it or you don't. If you turn it on, it will impact any reward tier that's over $125, and you can allow people to make 3 payments over, set a month apart. So this is helpful if you have high ticket rewards, obviously, and we're seeing really good early signals of adoption with that. Some more new features. Oh yeah, did you want to say something,
I'll
Teddy?
say talking about like those higher levels of awards. I know obviously every campaign is going to be different, and some people offer some rewards and some offers other different types of things. But say if you had to describe what a typical Kickstarter book launch looks like, how much would those reward levels be, and what would be the thing that was offered as a sort of a reward at that level?
Well, it's going to depend a lot on your budget.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I
Yeah.
think it's going to look very different if you're releasing, a print run of paperbacks or deluxe editions. I would say it is less interesting what is sort of typical and much more important what you're going to need to do to raise the money that you want.
Okay.
This is sort of like the stuff that I've been talking about all throughout this presentation. You want to make sure that you find what makes the most sense for you, for your budget, for your audience, and for all the things that you're hoping to do.
Great. Sounds good.
I think this is my close to the end. A couple other just quick note about other new features. You can now do secret and featured rewards. So you can have secret rewards where you make a custom link that only buddy who accesses the campaign through that link will see a secret reward. So you can do that for like your Patreon subscribers or people who followed you on Instagram or your favorite friends, whatever it is that you want to do. Featured rewards set the main tier that you want as many people to back as possible at the top of the list rather than it all proceeding from lowest to most dollars. Late pledges we talked about briefly. We have now expanded pre-launch pages. So in addition to being primarily about getting followers, you can add a lot more context and images about your campaign. We've also revamped our text editor, which so you can embed a lot more forms of media into it. It's a lot more user friendly, that sort of thing. So that should be nice for everyone. Oh, and that's it. That's the end of my presentation. So let
Brilliant.
me close out of this and stop sharing. And you let me know what other questions you still have.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. Thank you so much for coming on. So I've got a couple of questions. So one of the first ones is, um, you talked a lot about different things people can offer, like as special editions or other things. Do where can people find out about like how to do that? Because I know a lot of people who I speak to are they've only launched their book on Amazon and doing print on demand. So have you got a good resource for anyone who wants to learn about what is possible?
Print production is vastly complicated.
Yeah,
Kickstarter is really like we are a platform designed for people who are doing DIY. So like I wouldn't say to you like everybody should print
yeah.
at this place for this reason. I would say one really nice resource, there's a community run Kickstarter for Authors Facebook group. I
Oh,
think it's just
nice.
called Kickstarter for Authors. It's run by Anthea Sharp and Thorn Coyle. They're excellent. They run a really tight ship. There's like 7,500 authors there just kind of asking each other questions just like that. I know there's also a lot of Reddit groups that are for authors and for Kickstarter authors in specific and for self-publishing authors, that sort of thing. So, community building is like a huge part of the work you're going to be doing around your author career anyway. And I would allow that to be something that you really plug into for questions like that. I mean, like I said, for Kickstarter, we're just going to help you raise the money.
Yeah.
It's up to you to decide where to print, what features you want, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, nice. If someone's thinking about doing Kickstarter for the very first time, what would be the main advice you would give them for how they can set up that campaign to have the best possible chance of success?
Do your homework, you know, do your homework, which in terms of like budgeting and understanding your needs, in terms of learning about Kickstarter and, you know, talking to other authors and creators who have done it, looking at other campaigns and like understanding best practices. We also have a whole Kickstarter learning lab, which is kickstarter.com/learning dash lab. As expected, tons of videos and tutorials and resources and links for anyone at any stage of their crowdfunding journey.
Great. And if people are thinking, oh, I don't, I'd love to give Kickstarter a go to try and fund my next book or do something like that, but I don't really know how much money I need to raise or like, what is a good place to start with thinking about that budget and how much they need to raise?
Yeah, I mean, you need to find some printers, contact them, get samples, get
Yeah.
quotes. It's going to make a huge difference how many pages your book is, how many books your series has, whether you're doing hardback or softcover, whether you're doing offset or, you know, like the kinds of. So it can be, you know, if you just want the simple stuff, I would say Ingram, Lulu, Mixum are excellent. Very user friendly print shops. If you're trying to do crazy bells and whistles, you probably need to look overseas and, you know, book vault and places like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that's where you got to start. You got to start researching and figuring out what you want to do and where you're going to get it done.
Nice, great. That's really good. And then there's one last one was like once your campaign's ended and you've funded how much money you want to raise, what does that next process look like? Does Kickstarter say, look, these are the people, this is what you've been promised, now you've got to go and deliver it? How does that process look like?
Yeah, well, I mean that too is like it can be very simple, it can be very complicated. You will get Stripe has 2 weeks after your successful close of campaign to collect all that money and deposit it into your account. At that point, starting then or starting whenever you want, based on do you still have to finish writing it? Do you need an editor? Do you need all of that? You know, you're going to sort of figure out all the stages for your fulfillment. As I was saying, we have a pledge manager that at the point when you begin fulfillment, you're going to send out a survey to get everybody's mailing address and various information, and that will help sort of help you keep organized what goes to whom and when, and then, you know, either get all the neighborhood kids together, buy them some pizza and have them pack your boxes for you. You can work with a fulfillment company if you're, you know, looking at a much bigger kind of campaign there too. Like, we let you decide the best ways that you want to sort out your production and fulfillment of your rewards.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, that's been really great. I think that's a really good introduction to how Kickstarter works. If people want to get in touch or want to start a campaign, where's the best place for them to go and learn more?
Go to Kickstarter.com. There's a button to start a page or to start a project on, I think, every page. Yeah, there and, you know, find other people who are doing this, build your community, talk to people. You don't have to do it alone. We have tons of resources. The internet has tons of resources. Yeah, so it is not hard. Anybody who wants to do it can probably figure it out.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That's been really, really good. It's been great chatting to you again, and we'll hopefully see you again soon at a conference or something like
Totally. And thank you again for having me. I hope that this was illuminating for your audience.
that. Thanks. Bye.